5th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. Mr. Winarski, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Witherspoon. He has a presentation for tonight.
Thank you very much. This evening, we are honored to have the Erie Rise Academy here with us this evening, and they plan to participate with us. I would like to have Romaine Elverton and Solomon Ravenel come to the stage, please. Please rise for our pledge of allegiance. Come on up on stage. I love your youth so much, I don't even use my cane when I talk to you.
Thank you, sir. How you doing?
How are you?
Good handshake, too.
And next we have, let me explain something. Some time ago, we created a program we call a junior council person. And each council person has the opportunity of bringing someone up and sitting up here, being a junior council person and telling us what they are doing, what school they go to, what they want to do. And we still put them on the same 5-minute speech that you would be out there. Every now and then we get a student that like to go. But I'd like to call, was it Isabella? Where are you? You want to tell us who you are, what school you go to, and something about yourself.
I go to Erie Rise Leadership Academy Charter School. One thing about myself is that I love to color, and for my opinion, I think I'm a good artist.
Good deal.
You know, you have to stay here all night with us.
I'm okay with that.
Well, you sit there and enjoy yourself as much as you can. Right? And when we're done and it's time for you to go, you'll be ready for school, Mr. Smith will call you. You can leave. We can't leave. Okay? Very good, honey. I would like to have,
This one's mine.
let me pronounce this right. Help me, Mr. Smith. How about Martha? Okay, Martha. Tell us about spelling bee.
Hello, my name is Kiara Moffitt. I am an 8th grade student at Erie Rise Leadership Academy Charter School. For my 9th grade year of school, I will be attending Villa Maria Academy. Last year, I attempted my school spelling bee, and I actually really enjoyed it. I placed second place in the school and went on to the Boys and Girls Club for the school nationals, and I ended in 4th. As a student, I encourage other students from different schools and my school to at least try to attempt a spelling bee or something they never tried out before.
Congrats, good job.
Congratulations.
Isabella, you only needed 7 votes to be a junior council. And you received 7 votes. Then we had to get the stamp of the mayor who's sitting right over there. He stamped it. The controller stamped it. The treasurer stamped it. The secretary stamped it. And the city of Erie stamped it. So I'd like to present you with a certificate as a junior council person.
Congrats. Did you put your application in by chance? We got an extra seat up here. We could use it.
And while she's shaking hands, I would like to ask Mr. Homer Smith to come up, please. Hold up, now, you go.
Gotta come upstairs.
Mr. Smith is with the Erie Rise Academy, Public and Community Relations Administrator. Mr. Smith?
Good evening. I'd like to again thank the City Council for allowing our students to have this experience. We have with us our CEO, Mr. Terry Lang, and our board chairperson, Mrs. Constance Ratcliffe. Last year, we had our first annual spelling bee, and Mrs. McCautry is going to tell you a little bit more about it. We'd like to thank Mr. Witherspoon, who's visited the school, and also along with the mayor who came by. And the mayor also served as a judge last year, so we thank you for that opportunity. Amen. Before I turn over the microphone to Ms. McCautry, Ms. Matai had something that she wanted to read. If she could read that statement, it would be greatly appreciated. Once again, we thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to bringing other students just to see how city government is run, and we never know a future city council person can be in our midst. So thank you so much. And if Ms. Matai could read her statement, it would be greatly appreciated.
Hello. Today I'm gonna read my speech I made. For a successful life comes good manner, great education, good deeds, good grades, great friends, great teachers. Being helpful. Remember, life gives you a lot of opportunities. You should take them when you can and never take advantage of anyone.
Again, I would like to thank the Erie Rise family for sharing your evening with us. And of course, the beautiful students that you have. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
If you could have Ms. McCautry just tell you a little bit about the upcoming spelling bee, and we'll be out your way.
Oh, I mean, if you really want me to.
This is my house.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir. Alrighty. My name is Diantha McCautry. I was the spelling bee coordinator for Erie Rise last year, and we are in the process of planning for this year as well. So we have our school spelling bee, and the students are broken up into grade band categories. So the 3rd and 4th graders are together, 5th and 6th, and 7th and 8th graders. Last year, the school choice city bee was at the Boys and Girls Club, and the Robert Benjamin Wiley Charter School, the Montessori Regional Charter School, and Mother Teresa Academy were instrumental in helping us plan that event, and their students did participate as well. This year, we are starting the planning process and hope to have the School Choice City Spelling Bee at the Hurt Auditorium, and we hope to include some more schools. So we hope that we can see some of you guys there at the end of March.
Yes, it's one of those. Yeah, it was in the folder. Somehow got missed. Okay, approval of minutes from the January 6, 2020 meeting, bills for payment on January 17th and 24th, 2020. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski.
Brings us to repository sales this evening. Do we have anybody here this evening regarding a repository sale? Anybody here regarding a repository sale? Hearing none, that will bring us to citizens to be heard. Looks like we have 3 ladies that did sign up. First one being Linda Maurer. Is she here this evening?
Hi, it's Lucinda, Lucinda Maurer, 5833 Mill Street in Erie, Pennsylvania. Thank you for having us back again and allowing us to speak in regards to the ongoing debate of Airbnbs in the city of Erie. We probably would not have approached City Council this soon after our first presentation. However, since that time, a few people from Glenwood chose to attend a council meeting and present you with some misleading information. Our goal initially was to inform and educate council on Airbnb and its benefits to the city of Erie, as well as the guests we host. Glenwood has made it all about their neighborhood. They are fighting against Airbnb in Glenwood. We are fighting for Airbnb in all of Erie. Glenwood is approximately 250 residents who, by the way, are not all against Airbnb in their neighborhood and do not have a problem with it. Erie's population is approximately 97,000 people. As city officials, you are elected to serve all of Erie and its best interests, not just a small handful of people. It was mentioned by the Glenwood resident that I do not even live in the city and cannot vote for city officials. This is true. However, I have many friends that live in the city and own Airbnbs in the city of Erie. Erie is my home and has been for over 60 years. Just because I don't live within the city limits doesn't mean I don't care or have a say in how our city runs. I lost my place, sorry. I do care about Erie and how it succeeds and prospers. I care very much about the city and its growth. My address says Erie, PA, and my zip code is the same as Glenwood's, 16509. My son and his family are renting an Airbnb located in the Frontier area, and ironically, the owners of that Airbnb, her parents, live in Glenwood. Our intent is not to make enemies of our neighbors or cause any dissension, but rather help in the economic growth of our city. The interesting fact about Glenwood's initial complaint was not with our Airbnb, but the one across the street. They had the loud parties and the disrespectful guests. We, on the other hand, in over 3 years, have not caused one problem to the neighborhood. Most people did not even know we were running the Airbnb until the Glenwood Association brought it to their attention. Of course, the income we receive from running the Airbnb is very beneficial to us, but I can truthfully say to you, I love running this business and seeing the pleasure and joy, and sometimes even the comfort it affords our guests. This is a wonderful reflection on our city and what it offers. We had a lovely family stay with us over the holidays, and I have made copies for you of the heartfelt note they left in our guest book. This note speaks volumes to what staying in an Airbnb meant to this family. It also reflects very well on our city and what it offered this family. This lobbying is about the revenue Airbnb can benefit the city of Erie, but just as importantly, it's about the wonderful impression it leaves on our guests and visitors while visiting our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Second person to sign in was a Susan Morse.
Hi, my name's Susan Morse, and I'm at 4706 Upland, and I'm the owner of an Airbnb in Glenwood. And I live full-time in Florida. The home is my second home, which now we Airbnb out. And I too felt that the Glenwood folks that came here to the last meeting were a little disingenuous, because I've never once had one complaint. And really the only complaint of the other Airbnb was only a one-time event for young college kids having a party that we didn't even hear, but nevertheless, I thought that their approach was more for just the few people, as my sister just mentioned, Lucinda, that this is for the whole city. And I come back to Erie. I was raised here. When I leave Florida, I always say to my family, I'm going home. And even though I can't vote here, I have a beautiful home. I belong to a club here. I go to church when I'm here, and my entire family's here. But more importantly, from my standpoint, what I want to say to you tonight is about the revenue and the goodness that it can bring to the city. And what I did was look back at numbers which I had mentioned to you before, but the Airbnb seem to be increasing. Now, we do notice in the winter that it goes down a little bit, but I had figured more recently that it potentially could mean about $1.3 million in taxes for someone that's running anywhere from $100 to $150 a night. Even at a 50% occupancy, that's $675,000. And then it goes to the heart of it, the people that are earning the money. Even at a 50% occupancy, that's $1.2 million. And it just doesn't stop there. It's not the revenue just from the taxes, but also the income for the person that has the Airbnb, and for the other ancillary jobs, the monies that they spend in the city. When you go to an Airbnb site, you can see where people will advertise, will take you on ski lessons, golf lessons, boating lessons, cooking in your home. It's a job creator. So it's not just, again, the taxes, but it's the revenue, the income you spend, and the other jobs that it does provide. Also, we are here to really encourage that there is some legislation or an ordinance passed, because there isn't one. The city does collect money on these Airbnbs along with the county, and even though the county has more Airbnbs, the city collects the taxes on properties that currently from R1s are in violation of zoning. And it's better to not create hostility in neighborhoods, but to have rules that are fair and equal. And in Glenwood, their history has been very strict on what they want.
and some of it's been pretty dark. I mean, even as early as in the 30s and 40s from the original homeowners, it's no blacks, no Jews, no Polish. I mean, really? And now it's like, well, you can do this in any other neighborhood or in R1, but not in our R1. And the R1's neighborhoods run in the veins of Erie. It's not just Frontier and Glenwood. There are several R1 zones. And I just feel that if there was an ordinance passed sooner than later, that it would be a good thing. And my sisters, we would really like to encourage the council to use us. We would volunteer our time to be as a committee or an advisory board, because I'll brag because the sisters really run the Airbnb, but it's 5-star and we're super hosts. And we get that it needs rules. No, you know, what those regulations are, we have a list of examples that we would be happy to share with the council. Thank you very much for your time, and I suppose we might be back here again.
Thank you. We have a Miss Kathy Whipple here this evening.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Whipple. I reside at 6072 Hummingbird Court, Erie, Pennsylvania, 16509. I'm here again with my sisters to address the ongoing issue pertaining to the Airbnb status in the city of Erie. Some members of council have already heard from us. However, these remarks are for the new members as well as a refresher for the others. I think that we can all agree that we want to see the city of Erie move forward in a progressive manner, showcasing what we have to offer as noted on the front page of Sunday's paper, January 12th. Mayor Schember has a mission for the city of Erie: build opportunity, restore hope, and transform Erie. Mayor Schember's vision is a rich cultural diversity, and I emphasize welcoming. Vibrant neighborhoods, world-class downtown and bayfront, excellent education for everyone, and an abundance of family-sustaining jobs. Added to that, the GDP growth, which shows Erie on the move, as mentioned on the editorial page on Sunday's paper as well. With all that in mind, the Airbnb issue, as I see it, is a part of that mission, vision, and growth. My sister and I had the opportunity to attend Mayor Schember's Brown Bag Lunch in December. I asked the question to those attending, how many have stayed in an Airbnb? Half of the room had done so, and all stated they had a wonderful experience. After an article was written in the Erie Reader about our Airbnb, one comment was made, and I quote, "It is explicitly not allowed under R1 zoning. It is allowed in most other areas of the city. Knock yourself out, just not in Glenwood and Frontier." I ask you, is this how you want to welcome visitors to Erie? You can come and stay, just not in Glenwood and Frontier. Not very forward thinking, is it? Airbnbs are here to stay in Erie, in the state of Pennsylvania, the county, and worldwide. They need to be regulated, inspected, just as rentals are, with operating fees, guidelines, and allowed to operate in R1 districts. Establishing guidelines are extremely important. Currently, as mentioned before, there are no guidelines in place for Airbnb operations in the city of Erie. We're asking that they be allowed to operate in R1 areas with guidelines in place as a compromise to the current Airbnb issue. Erie has so much to offer: job opportunities, industry, education, top-notch medical facilities, and our jewel, Presque Isle, all of which have found our Airbnb a blessing and an excellent advertisement for the city of Erie and the surrounding areas. To my knowledge, there have been no issues with any Airbnbs that are in operation, either here in the city of Erie or the surrounding areas. They are operated with respect to the neighbors, the homeowners, and the area in which they are located. As the city moves forward, let's move the Airbnbs forward as well, so that Erie can become what we know the city can operate as. Lastly, may I make a suggestion to council? Speak to the owners of local Airbnbs. Speak to people who have used Airbnbs, both here in Erie and elsewhere. Form a committee to learn about the pros and cons of Airbnbs. We, as in myself and my sisters, are more than willing to be a liaison should you decide to go that route. The Airbnb issue needs to be addressed in a timely manner so that we can move forward and bring more positivity to the Erie. I thank you for your time and look forward to working with all of you in the future.
Thank you. Rose, can I bug you? No, that's from them. Please step forward. Any other citizens be heard this evening?
Hello, Art Leopold, 5341 Apple Grove Lane, Erie, PA. Wanted to welcome the new council members. Look forward to your service, and obviously the existing council members. Thank you very much for your service. I have a few items this evening. Number one, I wanted to congratulate you on your response to the closing of the Erie Coke plant and the offer of help to the former employees. I think it was appropriate and right, just as it was correct and right to ask the DEP to stand forward and support their regulations. So I do appreciate what council did and the mayor did, and thank you very much. Obviously, we should continue to offer help to those former employees to make sure that everybody can find a decent job. Second of all, I want to congratulate the mayor recently putting out activating our vision plan. Long ago, we talked about accountability. He had goals, and now we see where he wishes to hold himself and his staff accountable. I want to thank you very much. It's a bold move, and it's a meaningful move. It doesn't mean that we offer or have a need for criticism, but to know where we are on the goals. And I thank you very much for that. Also, I want to support Ms. Allen's resolution on the vacancy selection for council. I think it's the right thing to do to systematize that. I also want to urge that you keep in mind all those folks that ran for office and who tried to step forward and be of service. I think you should weigh that in your consideration. Things upcoming for the new year is we're looking forward to sustainability on the environmental front, and we'd like to see a resolution to ban one-use plastic bags. It's been done in other cities. Right now, there's a moratorium for about a year that no city can put forth such an ordinance, but that would be up in June. So we look forward to, hopefully, council can do something regarding plastic bags. And last but not least, community benefit agreements is back on the agenda. I'd like to see increased and fair wages, minority hire, and local hire systematized with a resolution and ordinance for the city. It was something that got dropped out of the LRTA when the new LRTA got passed, and I think we ought to add that back in. There's been a lot of conversation. There's been 3 study sessions, and it's time the city do something on that regard. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Again.
My name is Solomon Ravenel Kennard. Greek philosophy's influence on MLK Jr. In the speech I've Been to the Mountaintop, Martin Luther King Jr. mentioned Greek mythology. In the 4th sentence of the 3rd paragraph, he said he would take his mind to Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus is the home of the Greek gods. The gods have a council there every winter and summer solstice. He also said that, quote, he would C. Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Euripides, and Aristophanes assembled around the Parthenon as they discussed the great and eternal issues of reality. Here are facts about these men. Plato was an Athenian philosopher who was born on May 21st, 429 BC. This was during the classical period in ancient Greece. He was the founder of the Platonist school of thought. He was also the founder of the Academy, the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher and polymath during the same period. He was the founder of Lucianum and the Peripatetic school of philosophy. His teacher is Plato, and both are known as the fathers of Western philosophy. Socrates was a Greek philosopher as well, and is credited as one of the founders of Western philosophy. He's also known for being the first moral philosopher of the Western ethical tradition of thought. He didn't write anything because people didn't understand him. Euripides was a tragedian of classical Athens. He is one of 3 ancient Greek tragedians for whom a significant number of plays have survived. Of the 92 plays made by him, 18 or 19 weren't finished, and some had fragments of other plays. Although most of his plays survived intact because of his popularity, during the Hellenistic age, he became a cornerstone of ancient literary education. Aristophanes was a comic playwright of ancient Athens and a poet of old Attic comedy. Aristophanes had 40 plays, but only 11 survived. These were used to define a genre of comic drama known as old comedy. The goal of this presentation is to inspire you to make good decisions about our community. Thank you.
My name is Claudia Valentine. I live at 1128 West 10th Street, Erie, 16502. And I have an Airbnb that's located at West 27th Street, 16508. I've been running this for the last 3 years. That home has been in my family for 70 years. I just wanted to share with you what some of the guests coming through are like and what they're doing. I think that's important for you to be aware of. I've had such a marvelous cross-section. A large percentage in the last 3 years have been returning Erieites. They're coming back for graduations, funerals, weddings. This weekend I have somebody coming from Buffalo for a baptism. So a big percentage are those. But I've also had some really interesting groups coming through. I had a professor from South Korea bring 4 students. They wanted to look at Gannon and look at Erie with the idea of using Gannon for graduate study. I've had one family return 3 different times because their daughter dances at Mercyhurst University. Every time there was a ballet, they came. I even decorated with nutcrackers once because she was in the Nutcracker and they loved that. I have somebody from Germany that came. She had a son that was an exchange student in Wisconsin. They picked him up, brought him to Erie. They wanted to use Erie as a jumping off spot to see the Great Lakes. And having met the people, it's just, I can't tell you how exciting. I have brochures there. I try to make sure all of our one-of-a-kind restaurants and businesses are represented. People are very enthusiastic after they've had a chance to stay. I've also had a situation where a gentleman came from a smaller town in Pennsylvania for a one-day heart procedure, and his family stayed at my Airbnb, which is not far from St. Vincent's. They didn't want to go home right away because they were worried some difficulty might happen, and we're very happy to have a home environment. So it does bring business. I know from cleaning up after them that they do an awful lot of shopping in Erie. So please consider this. I'd be glad to be involved in any way to be helpful. I think it's very important to Erie to support Airbnb. Thank you for your time.
That's all right. We'd like to just recognize our junior council person, Isabella. Thank you very much. Great job. Hiya.
Hi. Hi, my name is Kathleen Fisher. My residence is 614 East 24th Street. I am the third generation of owning my home and also the current president of the East Side Neighborhood Association. Our neighborhood association goes from 16th Street to 26th Street, from Parade to East Avenue. For the most part, it is a quiet neighborhood. We have a lot of hopes and dreams in our neighborhood, but there have been a couple of issues that I'm sure you're all aware of, that we will keep making sure you're aware of, because there have been, to date, approximately 17 cases of shots fired outside of Energy and a case of shots fired outside of Rumors Lounge on New Year's Day. That was not the way I wanted to start my year out. As president of the East Side Neighborhood Association, I have a letter I'd like to read from the Holy Trinity Roman Catholic Church. This is from Father Jason A. Glover. Esteemed City Council members, I am writing to you as a pastor of the Holy Trinity Catholic Church located at 2220 Reed Street, Erie, and as a resident of the east side of the city of Erie. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend this evening personally for the City Council meeting due to a previous commitment, but I wanted to write to express my grave concerns regarding the establishment located on 24th and Ash Streets, known as Rumors, and Energy Club located on the 700 block of East 22nd Street. The parishioners of Holy Trinity, the patrons of the Holy Trinity Society Club, and I are committed to our East Side Erie neighborhood. We invest a lot of time and financial resources to maintain an attractive presence between 22nd and 23rd Street. However, a rather significant increase in dangerous activity in the neighborhood undermines all of our efforts. Just over the past 2 weekends, reports have been made of shots fired in our vicinity. Such incidents have been on the rise over the past few weeks and indeed months. As my parish population ages, my people are becoming even more fearful of being in the neighborhood because of unnecessary physical dangers it poses to them, and it is simply becoming more unsafe, especially after dusk when so many of our parish activities take place. Without their volunteer help in and around our church property to maintain our grounds and buildings, I fear that we may succumb to the blight that is becoming even more apparent on the east side of Erie. As both pastor and resident of the city of Erie, it is my hope that the members of City Council support our efforts and financial investments to continue working to preserve the safe and attractive neighborhood. Respectfully, Father Jason A. Glover, pastor, Holy Trinity Catholic Church. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jessica Ball. I live at 747 East 22nd Street. I am here again about Club Energy on 22nd and Wayne. We've been coming here since, I believe, July or August, and it is still an ongoing issue with the noise, the drinking, the shooting, the blocking of the roads. It's out of control. The mayor's office said they would work with them, at least make them clean up their garbage. You go up and down the block, and there are broken bottles, and there's cans, and there's liquor. I mean, it's ridiculous that this is what we walk out to, and it's not being picked up. It's not being addressed. We get woke up every single weekend, repeatedly, and I'm just now to the point where my children stay at home on the weekends. Another shooting on Saturday, and my children are in my home. You know, and many of the people that live on the block where I live aren't able to send their children away on the weekend, and we shouldn't have to. This is 6 months later since this started, and we're still dealing with it over and over. You know, it's been said before, if this was in a richer neighborhood, this would not be tolerated. There is something that can be done, either an ordinance created or amended in order to prohibit this kind of behavior and be able to sanction them for allowing this to go on. I've had enough of it. And I know something can be done because they're not on the west side, they're not in the nicer neighborhoods. So clear they've gotten shut down there. There's gotta be some way to get them out of the city completely, because I don't want this club or that club shut down. We need a ban so this does not pop up in another neighborhood where other children live. There have been, I believe 17 shootings since July. Only one person has been shot, which means everything else is a stray bullet that risks hitting my child or somebody else's child if this isn't addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Roxanne Benson. I also live at 747 East 22nd Street, first floor. These comments are more or less directed to the new council members. These people are the ones that are all here all the time. I've heard this over and over, so they should know it by heart almost. It is the situation of our neighborhood around 22nd and Wayne, including streets to the north, east, south, and west of ours. The source of our problem is an after-hours establishment known as Energy. We're usually open from around 11 p.m. on the weekends until about 4:30 or so a.m. the next day. Since June, there have been calls to 911 and the non-emergency number for at least 14 fights, some of them quite large, 18 noise, where people coming and going to this club or hanging out, not going, just hanging out with their buddies by the club, yelling, screaming, carrying on, banging on stuff. And like was said before, at least 17 shots fired calls. These range anywhere from a number of 1 to 2 shots up to 12, 15. Excuse me. So far, nobody's been seriously hurt. One person had been shot, minor injuries. But our fear for the future, it's only gonna be a matter of time before something deadly happens, or more than one person may be hurt. If they shoot when there's a crowd out in front of this club, loitering, and they open fire at the club, a lot of people are gonna be hurt. Property damage is also occurring. Cars and houses have been shot at. My tires were slashed. My son-in-law's car, when one of the shots fired, went right through his car. It cost him out-of-pocket expenses for that. Why should our houses have bullet holes in them? They shouldn't. And one of my neighbors was actually hurt in an altercation with a guy a while back that he caught urinating on the side of his house. That used to be a problem between my house and my neighbors on either side until I started putting real bright lights up every Friday and Saturday night just so that they wouldn't do that. There are many children in our neighborhood, as my daughter mentioned, who are in danger, not to mention everyone else who lives in and around Energy. Many phone calls to public officials have given us. We're looking into it. Some have been very encouraging, while others seem indifferent to our plight. Myself and several others have been to almost all the council meetings since August or thereabouts concerning the situation. Out of the 7 council members, there were only 3 that reached out to us. Traffic is bad enough that at times the police that are driving through on their patrol routes have had to use their lights and sirens to get the cars to move on. Parking violations are rampant. They're blocking people's driveways. If something would happen and they would have to get out of their driveway, they have no way to do that. They're also blocking a fire hydrant. And they're parking the wrong way on the street, which is illegal. I mean, you might not think so at 12:03 in the morning, but still illegal. I got a ticket years and years ago for the same thing. On nights they have special events, birthday parties, whatever. The noise from the loud music, yelling from people and going to and coming from Energy is worse. It's been 7 months or thereabouts this has been going on. We're more than tired of it. We also have neighbors that have serious medical issues. Do they really need this added to their lives? Also our elderly neighbors. And we have one elderly lady that, bless her heart, she lives within 10 feet of this Energy. So you can imagine the noise and the music and they cut through her, between her house and the side of Energy and do whatever they do. They come back out and we all realize there are far more, maybe worse crimes for our police and city officials than our problem, but we are still a part of this city and our problems need to be addressed also. There's also another after-hours establishment, 24th and Ash, called Rumors, also in a residential neighborhood. The residents there are going through the same thing that we are for the past, I'll say, 3 months. We are not opposed to after-hour establishments, but we do not, and they do not need to be in residential areas. With all the empty buildings in some places in the city that are not residential sites, let them set up shop there. What we are seeking is to find a way to get these two places of major problems shut down and an ordinance presented and passed on these types of places so that they can no longer be allowed to operate in residential cities. So much time and energy and money is being spent on downtown Erie and Bayfront to attract more people to our city. What are you doing for the people who live in these problem areas? If some place like Energy or Rumors opened up in your neighborhood, how would you like it? Footage of some of the things that have been going on can be found on Jessica Ball on Facebook. Her profile picture is of a brown and white dog. And if any of you would like more details, feel free to contact me. And when we started coming to these meetings, we also suggested that anybody that wanted to, I have an enclosed porch, that they were free to come whatever time in the early morning hours they wished, would make them feel welcome, make room for them, so that they could see firsthand what our neighborhoods and our other neighbors, 24th and Ash, are going through every weekend. We need it stopped. 7 months is long enough. You guys get ordinances brought up, and oh yeah, we can pass that. So right away, you know, first,
Ms.
second
Benson.
readings or whatever,
Ms.
they're
Benson,
usually
your-
passed.
your-
So
your-
I'm done, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Margarita Dengel, 1948 West 33rd Street. For months now, we have been concerned about the neighbors near the Energy Club on 759 East 22nd Street. The neighbors have to endure the blocking of driveways, shootings, loud noise, loitering, people screaming and fighting on the street between 1 and 4 o'clock in the morning. There's some form of disturbance every night they are open. A few weeks back, we have approached you because of our fear that the opening of the second club on 602 East 24th Street would add more disturbance to our neighborhood. Despite promises from the club owner and the city departments that this establishment would not cause trouble, we are experiencing late-night activities, loud music, vehicles blocking neighbors' driveways. We had the ambulance there for an overdose. We have fights on the street, and we had our first night shooting. Can there be a new look at this situation? Can we all work together? That means all stakeholders to find a solution that works for all. Can we find a way to hold the owners of the buildings and the owner of the club accountable for the behavior of the customers? Can we empower the appropriate agencies to act faster and more forcefully to violations to any kind? Can we make a case that the Energy Club and Rumors Lounge are a bottle club and should not be there, as they are churches within 1,000 feet? These clubs rather destabilize the neighborhood through their nightly activities and by spreading rumors on Facebook. This divides the community and builds mistrust. The progress we have made in revitalizing this area and bringing neighbors together is really damaged.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Henry. I live at 457 West Front Street in the lower West Bay Front. I'm here to say a few words about Airbnb. I have, for the last 2-3 years, been getting into residential real estate, and about 3 months ago, I heard on the radio a guy talking about Airbnb and how some of his most successful students were doing it in smaller towns and that they didn't necessarily own the property that they were in. So when I heard that, of course, I was like, okay, time to get to work. So I found a place downtown, I rented it, and to my surprise, in 45 days, I had only 3 vacant nights. So from essentially listing it, immediately it was practically packed, full. About a week after starting that unit, the HOA board had told me that I had to stop, and there was nothing I could do, and they threatened legal action. It was very harsh. There's more to the story, but that got me to see that the demand was there, so I decided to pursue it more. I'm in the process of purchasing properties that are in a zone that allows hotel motels, so I know that that's allowed, but when it comes to residential neighborhoods, that seems to be the issue. In my experience, both as being a guest of Airbnbs and also having hosted, people are looking for a more personal touch. They're looking for something that isn't as sterile. They want recommendations from their hosts. Sometimes they even enjoy staying in a house with people who live there because they can have conversation. These are things that you can't quite have in the same way from a hotel. I believe that we have been very helpful to the corporations that have brought hotels to our downtown area and Bayfront, and we should treat Airbnb with the same respect and open-mindedness. And as the Glenwood sisters, I'll refer to them as, have mentioned, there's quite a lot of tax revenue and other ways to benefit the city. Let's see. We live in an economic time where there's a lot of student loan debt, stagnant wages, limited job options, especially for young people. I believe things like Uber and Airbnb are extremely beneficial to young people to make a living and stay in Erie. And it makes Erie a more attractive place to live, work, and also visit. In my experience, people who I've been an Uber driver and obviously do Airbnb, and in my experience, people who have come to Erie and done one of those things, it's overwhelmingly positive. I am struck by it almost every time, and I think that is something that we as a city need to recognize, that we have something special here, and that people from really all over can want to keep coming back, because it is a unique escape. And I believe that we're in a stage where we're redefining what Erie is, and I hope that we don't make the same mistakes of the past where we prohibit things that can be progressive. Just a couple quick comments. I've had people say that they've been on trips where they've been to Canada and Buffalo, and they came to Erie and they didn't know what to expect, and that my place and the city was the best part of their trip. People saying that they loved Pineapple Eddie's and that they didn't know where to eat, and that they're so happy that I gave them that recommendation. I always recommend local businesses. So we can't precisely account for the ripple effect of experiences and feedback like that, but I hope that we appropriately value feedback like that. The individual personalized contact that a guest can have with Erie due to Airbnb is just worth it, in my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello, new council people. I'm Michael Keys and Ed Brzezinski, and welcome back, Mel Witherspoon. Today, I am here to applaud Liz Allen on her resolution.
Can I please bother you for your name and?
Oh, Jasmine Flores. I live at 631 East 9th Street.
Thank you.
So I came today to speak about Liz's resolution about the transparent government and a pillar of our democracy at all levels, and acknowledges the fact that democracy relies on the principle of one person, one vote. As a candidate who ran in May this past year, I was 187 votes short behind Mr. Michael Keys. I think that as a 26-year-old with no name recognition, I definitely worked really hard to get my 2,787 votes to come out and vote for me. I honestly believe that the Lower East Side has been neglected as far as representation, just because we haven't had an active sitting city council member for that area. I think that we want to keep the youth here. The only way to do that is representation, and we don't have any of that currently sitting on city council. I did submit my resume, and I do appreciate Liz trying to be as transparent as possible, because a lot of people, when I was door knocking, complained about the same people always being on city council, and that's why they have no hope in our democracy. So I would really hope to try to change that opinion, especially when we're trying to get the next generation involved with the political process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Martha Wachuku, 711 Myrtle Street. I'm here tonight to speak in support of Ms. Allen's resolution for transparency. I actually didn't prepare anything, so I'm just going to speak my mind. Actually, a few people were asking me today about my birthday coming up. I'm knocking on the door of 30, but I like to remind people that I'm not a kid. But I still feel very young, and I feel like I'm still growing up and learning a lot. And in this era of President Trump, and in this era of confusion and chaos in government and the lack of understanding and transparency in government, I think is really important for our local officials to set an example for people like myself who aren't actually that young. And for people like my mentee, who is 15, to know that they can trust government, and that when processes like a vacancy comes up, that there's something on the books that makes it clear to them that if they step up to apply at some point, that they know that they will get a fair chance. So I want to support that process, or the clarification of that process, because actually last week I called around the state and did research by myself to find out if there was any support on this from the state to help us through our own processes, and it was clear to me. They kept on referencing the third-class city code, which was not very helpful. So I came to City Hall to see if there was anything on the books regarding the actual day when applicants for the vacancy would be selected, and there was nothing. So I really think there needs to be something added to the books. Aside from that, again, as a young person, as an immigrant, as a person who is not making a lot of money, as a person who lives in the city, I think it's really important that when you're considering how you're going to fill the vacancy, that I myself and a lot of people in this community, and hearing the stories from tonight, don't feel represented by the people up here. And that is not necessarily your fault. That is not to say that you do not care about the community's issues, but I think it would be awesome to see a young person, or a person of a different religious background, or a person who is not currently represented up here, who can understand the experiences of the people who are living in that ash area, who can understand, have an idea about the Airbnb situation, who have stayed in Airbnbs, or try to hustle to make ends meet, like the young gentleman who was just here before me. So my points being, I support Liz Allen's resolution. I think there needs to be something on the books, and please consider, changing it up. I think the city has a great vision, but I think to get that vision to full reality, you need people like myself who are living it to bring it forward. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Elspeth Cayley, 1232 West 11th Street. I also am here in support of Councilperson Allen's resolution. I do believe there should be something official on the books for filling vacancies when they come up. And I wholeheartedly agree with Marty that, for instance, Jasmine came in right behind Mr. Keys. That would be an excellent first choice, in my opinion. Or Ms. Paisley, who also took the initiative to run, represents a separate demographic than a lot of you guys are representing. We would all, I think, do well by having a little more diversity, whether it's ethnicity diversity, or if it's, income, or where you live in the city, level of education, just a little bit more of a mix, and not keep, as much as I like Mr. Jones, Curtis Jones, not recycling people who've already been on council, giving younger people and people from different backgrounds a chance to do the job that you guys do. So I appreciate you, Liz. Thank you, and thank you guys, all of you, and welcome new council people.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other citizens to be heard this evening? Hearing none. Oh. Good evening, Mr. McDonald.
Good evening, Council. You know I got something to say. If I didn't, I wouldn't be down here. I want to talk about our kids. We got to encourage those kids. I don't know why the foreigners would stay in school longer than our kids will. They just happy to be over here to go to school. Our kids are falling out like flies. It don't make sense to me. You better stay in school and get all the education you can. Because when I was coming up, times was hard, but times are much harder now than they were when I was coming up. We got to encourage those kids to stay in school. They think they know more than the teacher do. The teacher got hers, or his. They got to get theirs. It's a shame that I don't know, they think they know everything. And mostly the kids of color, those kids are gonna need all education they could muster up. They don't seem to understand. We got to encourage our kids. And I want you all to get on it. I want you all to have something to say. Because you're on city council. Some of you up there ain't doing nothing. And some of you up there doing the best you can. I was talking to Katowski. He gave me a number to call him. I can't get through to him. I don't know why he keep giving me those numbers. But if he said he was going to be listening tonight, and I want him to know that I tried to call him, and it didn't go through. Something about a pound. You got to hit a pound number or something other. I don't know nothing about no pound number. Nothing about no pound. If you don't want to talk to me, don't give me no number. I'm not going to call you no more. You get up with me. And I thank y'all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Any other citizens this evening? Any other citizens to be heard? Rose, we'll move on with the agenda, please.
Ordinances for final passage. Council File 16145, official ordinance number 1, 2020. An ordinance amending the closing and vacating of approximately 4,740 square feet of Wagner Avenue adjacent to 1602 Wagner Avenue to approximately 7,500 square feet of Wagner Avenue adjacent to 1602 Wagner Avenue. By Mr. Witherspoon, second by Ms. Shaw. The council file ordinance number 16145, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading, but, is hereby adopted on, or shall now be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 1 of 2020, finally, by a 6 nay 0. Ordinances for first reading. Council file number 16146, an ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinance of Erie, Pennsylvania. By Mr. Winarski, second by Mr. Witherspoon, the council file ordinance number 16146, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16146 by yeas 6, nays 0 on first reading. Council file 16147, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $10,000 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received from the Erie Community Foundation to build language, access capacity, and serve limited English proficiency populations. By Mr. Winarski, second by Mr. Witherspoon, the council file ordinance number 16147, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16147 by yeas 6, nays 0 on first reading. That'll take us to new business. By Mr. Winarski, second by Mr. Witherspoon, resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that Mrs. Kathleen Schaaf is nominated as City Council President for 2020.
Vice President.
Vice President, isn't that what I said?
No.
I'm so sorry. Okay, City Council Vice President for 2020. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. By Ms. Allen, second by Ms. Schaaf, resolved by the Council of the City of Erie, recognizing that open, transparent government is a pillar of our democracy at all levels, and acknowledging the fact that democracy relies on the principle of one person, one vote, Erie City Council hereby adopts these procedural rules for filing the vacant seat on Erie City Council to complete the unexpired term of Kazimir Kwiatkowski through 2021. All applicants for the seat will be invited to respond in writing to 3 questions. Council members will determine the questions by consensus. Erie City Council will then select candidates for in-person public interviews based on the applicant's original application, resume, and responses to 3 questions. Erie City Council will then select at least 12 candidates to move to the balloting process. Erie City Council members will be eligible to vote for up to 6 candidates on the first ballot. Erie City Council members may choose to vote for fewer than 6 candidates, but may only cast 1 vote per candidate in all rounds of balloting. In other words, no council member may cast multiple votes for a single candidate. For each round of balloting, votes by council members will be announced publicly per Section 705 of Title 65, commonly known as Pennsylvania Sunshine Act. Ms. Allen?
Oh, Mr. President, I'd like to speak to this. And one of the things I wanted to do was actually to acknowledge Darnell Stallworth, who was here earlier, but he left. And he's in the current cohort at the Jefferson Civic Leadership Academy. And I spoke to the Jefferson group before Christmas, sometime in December. And I've been talking a lot for a couple of years about the process of what I've learned on City Council and also how vacancies are filled. And I was talking about my frustration with the process. And Darnell said, well, Miss Allen, why don't you do something about it? So the idea to try and grapple with this and figure out a process that's fair and transparent and acknowledges all of the people who have taken the time to apply for this vacancy and even the previous vacancy, it really started with that question from Darnell that day. Miss Allen or Liz or whatever, why don't you do something about this? I've also followed this process in my previous job at the newspaper, And I love to do research. So what we've been told is that we've always had this process where you do the balloting and then, you know, you come up with somebody and it's by secret ballot. But in going into the archives for the newspaper, I found out that I think it was in 1993, I have the story here somewhere, when council was going to fill a vacancy. I think it was after Jim Thompson died. I think that was the one. I can pull it out here. There was a nominating committee, which sounds logical. Lots of boards create nominating committees, but the nominating committee ended up not considering any of the, I think it was 26 people who had applied for the council seat, and instead plucked somebody out, and this was all political. It had something to do with the Democratic Party chairman. The person had not applied for the seat, and this nominating committee went and said, hey, we want you to be on council. And supposedly the person who got picked was so shocked he wasn't even here the day that the council voted this person in. They had to call him up and say, hey, can you get down here and get sworn in? That doesn't seem like a good way to fill a seat. The last time that, I'm sorry, not the time when we filled Bob Mursky's seat, but a previous time I was not on council. This was after Joe Schember had resigned, and City Council went through 8 different ballots, and it still kept ending in a tie. So it was a tie between John Evans, who's a Republican, and Tom Maggio, who was a Democrat. At the time, I wrote an editorial saying current City Council members flouted Pennsylvania's Sunshine Act by casting their votes for the new council member by secret ballot. But what happened was, in the end, the city clerk came by to council and said, are you going to vote for John Evans? And 4 of them said yes, and 2 of them said no. And one of the people who said no is David Brennan, who was on council, who kept telling me, he said, I don't remember the process being that you could vote as many times as you cast all your votes for one person. So I'm relying on David's memory from back then. Anyhow, so John Evans, this was this big shock because a Republican got named to city council. Of course, now I'm wondering, was there a process back then where people actually voted 6 times to get John Evans on there? I don't know what the politics of that was. But at any rate, it was the city clerk who came by and said, hey, you want to vote for this guy? And 4 of them said yes. So we need to come up with a better process. We need to be transparent. I had the idea last time that we should do interviews because that's how Harrisburg City Council filled a vacancy. They had 17 applicants and they had them all interviewed in public so that the public could hear from the people who were applying. And this is another state, but I just want to tell you, Spokane City Council had a vacancy. They actually have an actual application for city council. It was like, you had to answer like 10 questions to even be considered to fill that seat. And I was like, wow, I don't think we're there yet. But I do think that we need to treat this with all seriousness and to be transparent. I know there's uncomfortableness about, I put the number 12 in there just because last time I think we had 20 people that we balloted, so I thought, wow, I'll just pick a number. I don't know how many people were going to apply. I think we need to do due diligence and we need to narrow down the applications. You can't, if it was a regular business, you wouldn't interview 31 people, but we could find a way to narrow that down, and we did that last time. All 6 people on council came up with 5 people they wanted as finalists, which would be 30 people, but there was crossover, so we actually had 20 people who applied, and they were on the ballot, and we interviewed them, and then we voted by secret ballot. Pennsylvania has one of the strongest open meeting laws in the country, and we should be proud of that. It's not just because of, the free press. It's for citizens. That's why we want government in the sunshine, in openness. So I want to find a way to make sure, people are going to have behind the scenes, hey, I'll support you, or, that's political. But the votes have to be in public. And I know one of my colleagues said at the caucus session, well, this is an appointment, not really a vote. But I certainly think that everybody understands that it's a vote. When John Evans was appointed, Carrie, I'm using that word, but he thanked people. I know that all those folks who were voting for me were taking a certain amount of political risk because they're all Democrats, and supporting a Republican is not an easy thing to do. So if this is not a vote, we certainly have always treated it as a vote. So I'm appealing for a way to, at least this time, let's figure out a good process. We can continue to grapple with it. And finally, I just want to thank everybody who sent their applications in, because I've read every one. There are great cover letters, really good resumes. We need to figure out a way to get all of those people civically engaged.
Okay, what, before we vote, do we have any other comments? Do we have any comments before we vote?
I agree with Councilwoman Allen that we do need a open and transparent process for selecting or for appointing the next city council person. I also believe that there's more work that needs to be done on the proposal to make it solid so that it will be able to stand, the test of time and the test of actually going through the process.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. The only thing I was going to comment, yes, there's some good points from Ms. Allen in here regarding this proposal or this resolution. I think we didn't come together as a council to give everybody's input towards it. Our solicitor, Mr. Betza, gave us some points on how we could possibly do this to make it fair and still transparent. Even this one's more or less pointing to just this appointment as itself for Kaz's open seat. So in one breath, this resolution is just the one time for this appointment, and then we're going to change it down the road. Not saying we couldn't do it that way, but I think right at this point we still have too many questions, and I think we have too many variables involved with this resolution as it's written to pass it in this instance. But
What is our time frame then? Because we have 30 days from Kaz's resignation, which was January 6th. Correct, January 6th. Is that 30 business days, or is it 30?
30 calendar days from the date council
Okay.
accepts the resignation.
So and with that being said, Liz and Attorney Betza, it really doesn't have to be a resolution. We can agree on something as a council on what rules of this appointment, or we want, whatever we officially want to call it, but we can agree with something, and then, because I don't think as it sits today, I'm not sure it's going to pass.
Just set the, all I'm really saying is set the ground rules before you start the process. Because once you start voting, it'll be chaos. So
Right, and I believe this would need to be amended to appease everybody on council, and I don't think we can amend it enough tonight to get an agreement.
That's up to
I'm
council.
still voting yes on my own resolution.
Which is fine.
But I am open to, massaging it, but I just want to know when and how are we going to do this? Because Mr. Brzezinski is going to be out of town next week. I mean, the clock is going to start ticking, so how are we going to do this, and how are we going to make sure that the public knows what we're doing? So I'm voting yes when it comes around to it, because I did do a lot of research on this. I think it provides a good framework, but I want to know what's next, because I don't think that there are the votes here to do this. So what's next? How is this going to happen, that we're going to come up with a process between, when do we have to have this done by, Ed, would you say?
Well, I was just looking at your schedule. I think you're targeting
first meeting.
Your first meeting in February 5th, would be the ideal time, without calling, you can call a special meeting, but to realistically have everybody here at a time that's convenient would likely be the morning of February 5th at your regular council meeting.
And I'm saying, how are we gonna have a process in place by then? Unless we're gonna have a special committee meeting or
Well,
something.
part of that same process is gonna be, just like we've done in the past, is narrowing down the candidates and figuring out who possibly the finalists are. So as well as that's gonna take time, we're gonna have to come up with some, I think can be a simple solution, but, quickly.
There's a couple things you could do. If you're gonna take official action, you could call a special if we're targeting February 5th, you could call a special meeting and pick a time and a date. You'd have to advertise that and go through that process. So time is running out. The other option would be you could recess this meeting and reconvene it at a time that you identify tonight. And then make your decision or come up with your
To
process at that point.
Do the process.
Well,
And
or you could do the vote. I mean, however you do it is up to you. It just, the vote's gonna be, my advice is that the vote needs to be open, and you should have some process. All of the prior processes, as much as we may like or dislike them, I haven't heard any that are illegal. You're able to have 6 votes. I could give everybody 20 votes.
Let's do that.
There's side effects to all of these, but you can do it as long as we identify the process of what you're gonna do, who gets what, how you do it, and then have at it.
But we can't vote by secret ballot, correct? Is your understanding?
My opinion is that the vote needs to be in an open, public forum.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
now the open vote, is that the final vote when we're choosing a person, or we have to have an open vote from the beginning of the 31 down to the final one?
Anytime you take official action, it has to be in an open session. So the problem that I think you're touching on is, well, if it's not the final vote, well, if I'm taking 30 candidates and I'm reducing it down to 15, that is official action of council. And so if the process is to vote from 30 down to 15, my opinion is that would need to be in an open session with an open vote.
Thank you, Mr. Betza.
And at what point do we decide to recess the meeting? When does that occur? At the end of this? When we're done with the rest of the business today?
Yeah, you would not recess, well, you could
Or you-
recess at any point and reconvene. What all that does is reduce the expense of an advertisement, because you're putting the public on notice at the meeting. But you've gotta pick the date and time if you're gonna opt for that tonight. You can't say we're gonna recess it for a later date and then pick that date. That's a new meeting. This is gonna be, I don't know, I wasn't here before, but this is gonna be painful. And you just have to almost embrace it and say, it's gonna be painful to pick one candidate out of 30 people that are interested and that are qualified. I mean, you're blessed with having a lot of candidates. At a lot of municipal meetings, they don't have that luxury. They get nobody. I've had situations where people are calling their friends and family, trying to say, would somebody get somebody to agree to be nominated? You actually have a luxury of having 30. It's painful to, there's gonna be 29, or if it's 30, you're gonna have 29, one winner and 29 losers. That's not a fun situation to have pick one and not be able to pick the other 29. But for better, for worse, you have to do it and pick whoever is the best person to serve the residents.
Thank you for your guidance all along in helping the conversation.
And I apologize, when I say losers, I don't mean that they're losers as people. I'm just losers in the contest, that's all.
I have a question. I go back a long way with these things, but the thing that you sent us, Ed, the idea of having 3 people on a committee to narrow down the list, that's contradictory to what you just said, that we had to vote for every time we released somebody from the group.
Well, you would vote to adopt that, So what I suggested, is not everyone's seen it. There is another possibility, if you're not gonna have council all get together and do interviews, you're not gonna have council looking at it and discussing it, which you can do, you don't have to. You could assign this to a committee, and that committee can be comprised of members of council, it can be comprised of members or of other individuals that are not on council. Those individuals, if you like that idea, could conduct the interviews, could make recommendations to this council. So there's, under that idea was you would have 2, 3, or 4 people that are recommended. So the committee would come before council and say, we've looked at it, we did all the interviews, and our recommendation is these 4 people, or these 2 people, or these 3 people. You would then adopt with a vote, we'll accept those recommendations. Now we have 4 people, or whatever the number is, before us. You may want to allow those 4 people, I'm just making up a number, 4 people to speak to council, and then you vote. I need 4 votes to get somebody in. And so,
Or if we split though, the mayor chooses. If it becomes a tie, under the.
I think
right.
don't have a tie. I mean, we'll deal with it as it goes, but you should have 4 votes, because I think that's important to have clarity that we've identified. If everyone picks one person, the problem is you become vested in that person, and now you're gonna have, it's gonna be a 1 to 5 vote all day long. I vote yes, 5 vote no. And so we're never gonna get a candidate. That's why I say it's painful. You have to be open-minded, willing to take somebody that you didn't identify as the best candidate to start. And you've got to be able to find where 4 people are gonna agree that this person may not be my number 1 choice, or all 4, but they're gonna work for the best interests of the citizens, and you move on. But I really would strongly advise you figure out a way to get 4 people to vote yes. Hopefully 6.
The way it stands now, there is a process in place from what year do we want to say, back in the, and the process isn't of a resolution status, or?
It's, my understanding is it's just the way it's been done. I don't know that I've seen, and there's nothing wrong with the way it's been done. What has changed over the last several decades is, as Ms. Allen pointed out, the state statute regarding open meetings has been really expanded to allow the public to sit in and listen to the actual vote. So the process is fine if you like it. If you're asking me, do I like it? I think it can be problematic to have 20 people that we're gonna try to pare down as a council. Could it happen? Yeah, perfectly legal. It just may be very difficult, and it may be a very long meeting.
And just remind people though, that if they're voting 6 times for one person, everybody would know that, because it has to be a public vote that.
Well, as long as the ground rules are laid out, if you have 6 and I can spread them out or focus them, I don't have a problem with that, as long as we identify what the rules are before we start voting.
And even part of that 6, like's been mentioned before, just like you go to you can vote up to 4 council people at the polls. In here, you don't have to vote for 6, you can vote for 3. It's not like you.
Yeah, the distinction is I could actually cast, as I understand how it was done in the past, I could cast multiple votes for one person.
Correct.
That's different than kind of a bullet vote if there's
Yeah.
4 openings and I just pick one. I'm okay with whatever. I don't see a legal problem with how it's been done or anything I've heard tonight. Just please pick the process before you start narrowing down the candidates.
So we have a process proposed right now. I don't think it's gonna pass, but I still think we should vote on it and then figure out how to get the process that the majority wants that will be fair and transparent. So.
I guess start with the vote, right?
All
Yeah.
right. Roll call. Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
No.
Mr. Keys,
No.
Mrs. Schaaf,
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon,
No.
Mr. Winarski.
No.
This resolution does not adopt or fails to adopt 4-2. By Mrs. Schaaf, second by Mr. Winarski, resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that the mayor and other appropriate city officials are hereby authorized to execute an agreement between the City of Erie and the Erie Community Foundation whereby the Erie Community Foundation will invest funds in the amount of $10,000 in the effort to build language access capacity and the ability to serve limited English proficiency populations. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski.
Mr. President?
Yes,
May
sir.
I move the bill?
We have a second?
Second.
Any separations left within the new business and the purchase orders or contracts?
All right, moving the balance of the agenda, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. We have two waive rules tonight, Mr. President. One inadvertently, it was in the folder, somehow it didn't make the agenda, that was my fault, so we're gonna waive the rules on that, I think. And another one was just a late, entry by the administration. So waiving the rules for, resolution number 20, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. And this is a motion by Mr. Winarski, second by Ms. Schaaf. A resolution of the City Council to accept and support the neighborhood plan for East Bayfront Planning area, adopting the recommendations and the multiple year action plan and providing for an effective date. Ms. Allen?
Can I say, I'm going to vote yes. I just wanted to point out one thing. This is I'm very happy that this was, did you say this is one that we forgot to get on or whatever?
Yeah, it was in the folder, somehow it just got missed.
So I just wanted to let people know that I don't know if it's the Pennsylvania House or the Pennsylvania Senate, is looking again at the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act and is, something passed where you'll have to make sure that everything is on the agenda in advance, just so you know that, and it hasn't passed both houses yet at the state level, but just to let people know that we shouldn't be like putting stuff on waive the rules. But I'm not criticizing this, I'm just letting people know that I just read it today, so that could be coming down the pike. Anyhow, yes, on this piece of this ordinance, or this, whatever it is, resolution.
All right, continuing roll call, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski, and that'll pass 6-0. And then, resolution, for, enterprise zone loan. Voting to waive the rules. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski.
I'm a no.
Oh, you're a no? Okay, that will still pass. I'll read the resolution with a vote of 5-1. By Mr. Winarski, second by Ms. Schaaf. Resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that the Enterprise Zone Loan Review Committee approval of the following loan be formally ratified. C.G. Clark Jr. LLC in the amount of $58,500 for a term of 15 years with a fee of $292.50. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. And that'll pass 6-0. And that'll take us to committee reports, Mr. President.
Ms. Allen?
I don't really have a committee report. The Blighted Property Review Committee was canceled for this month, but I wanted to let citizens know that the president, working with the city clerk's office, has reorganized some of the committees, and I really like the way it's structured now. I have Redevelopment Authority added as a liaison, and I think that'll really, the way the other things are set up, that'll really strengthen our knowledge base. And we will have there is an opening on the Land Bank Authority. I kind of was postponing seeking applicants for that because I didn't want to get people confused with applying for city council. So I was going to put something together and also talk to the current person on there and let that person know. I think I said this at the last meeting, but let that person know to submit a resume for that too. But I like the realignment, so I don't think I have, there's nothing else that's been going on or new in the year here. Oh, I did have one other plea to my colleagues, though, is that I think a lot of times, I try and get to as many meetings as possible, but there are times when I can't get there, and I think it'd be really helpful for us to maybe, with the realization that we do have other people who can also sub in for us. So maybe when we can't get to certain meetings because we're part-time people, you know, people have jobs too, we could ask our colleagues to sub in if we can't get to a particular meeting where we really would like a liaison there to hear what's going on. Anyhow, so that's my report for tonight.
Mr. Witherspoon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say I was very impressed with the kids this evening, especially a young man who read documentation about Plato or Aristotle. You don't find people of that age reading that type of information. So it tells me that the report that was given maybe 6 or 7 months ago about kids unable to read at Rise Charter School was a lie. They may have looked at 1 or 2. So just want to say that. And a dear friend of mine, Ed Ryan, cancer attacked 3 major parts of his body. He's fighting back real good. I was with him today, and he's getting stronger. So Ed, if you're listening, God bless you. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Witherspoon. Vice President Schaaf.
Thank you, Mr. President. I attended the Grassroots Coalition meeting last week at the Quality Life Center, and the Sisters of St. Joseph and Gary Horton and the neighborhood are working very hard to continue the improvements in their neighborhood. I attended the zoning meeting yesterday, and as an educator since 1981, I was pleased to have the students from Erie Rise here today. The children are our future. As for Airbnb, about 5 years ago, I spent Christmas with my family in Carolinas in the mountains at an Airbnb, and I'll never forget that as long as I live. It was a wonderful time, and I do like how people leave things, what to do. It would be good revenue for our city, and I have never had a negative vacation with one. As for Club Energy, I don't know. I want things helped. I want to help. I met with the police. I've walked the neighborhood. Roxine Benson, thank you for your invitation, but my husband doesn't want me out at night by myself in your neighborhood. So I sort of have to weigh things at times, and as much as I like to think I'm a superwoman and just go out and do things by myself, I do have to continue my relationship, and he doesn't want to go, so unless I find another council person to go with me, and he really doesn't want me to do that either. But anyways, I apologize because I don't want that to continue. So we need to figure out something. I have met, like I said, with people, and I apologize that I'm not out there at 2 o'clock in the morning with you. So, as for council selection, I seconded Liz's resolution, and I wish it would have passed. Thank you to all the people who have applied. We have wonderful, wonderful people that are putting themselves out there. And just to reiterate, it is a part-time position, but a full-time job. And ideally, I wish I didn't have to work, so I could just be doing what I want to do on city council, but everything is a balance. So you have your family, you have your job, and you have council. So you just have to do the best you have, or do the best you can with the resources you have. And I'm available as often as I'd like to be, and it is what it is. So tomorrow is the Water Authority meeting. I am attending that, and I am going to work with people as much as possible to look into our situation with the water so we can approve that. That didn't get passed at the budget session. So we have things to do this year, and I like the activating our vision. I think we have a great planning team, and I have worked in the past knocking on doors with Mayor Joe and the police and the Hope and the Marvintown. I've done the surveys for both of the neighborhoods. Ms. Allen did it with me, Liz, the Summer of Hope, and that was a great experience. And actually I did it with my husband this year on East 28th Street because he likes to walk, so that was a fun thing to do as a family. I believe in our neighborhoods. I believe in strengthening our neighborhoods, and I thank anyone who has anything to do with making our neighborhood stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schaaf. Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, sir. Just getting my feet wet now, learning things very quickly. I've been here before, and I've been involved with a lot of things. I will second Mr. Witherspoon's comment on the Rise Academy. I was on the school board when we almost had to cancel them. But those folks really pulled up their shoestrings and got to work. And you saw the results of that today. Some beautiful kids here. And that's enough for the school district. I am jumping right in. I will be liaison to the convention center. We have a meeting tomorrow afternoon there. I am meeting with some folks from the Holy Trinity neighborhood to get my feet wet again on the things that are going on. Like anything else, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so it's good to keep your mouth closed and listen to as much as you can listen to until you can find out just where the facts lie. And finally, I am a Glenwood guy, but I'm not one of them guys. I'll talk to you after the meeting. Thank you.
I also attended the Eastside Grassroots Networks meeting the other day. They do have good plans for that neighborhood, and so I was impressed. I'd just like to make a couple comments, if you would, where, we made the final passage of the amending on number 1 on E, for vacating this property, this right-of-way. And I don't want to be the new Curtis Jones, but, I spoke with Ms. Jaffa. I was like, if we're giving something away, we should be getting something back. And I don't know if it's a nominal fee or a donation, but anytime the city gives something to a business or to a person, we should receive something in return. And just on the other one, about the late entries to the agenda, there's not that many things that are so pressing that they can't wait till another week until we've had a chance to view them and, and debate over them, or, to learn more about them. And so I voted no because I'm fundamentally against waiving the rules to pass stuff along when you deprive council and you deprive the public of the opportunity to know and full information about what's going on.
Mr. President, I'm sorry. I just noticed two things.
You do this all the time, Liz.
No. On our committee structure.
Yes.
There's, from Michael Keys and Ed Brzezinski, if you look under city departments and bureaus, there must have been a cut and paste so that, Michael and Ed both have the same,
Admin.
yeah. So, I just wanted to point that out,
Thank you.
we need to fix that. And then, this is an additional thing, since we were talking about Airbnb, and I don't know that we want to wait that long, but Kathy was talking about the amount of time people spend on council, and it occurred to me that, other departments have had interns, and maybe we might be able to get a public policy intern to help us with some of the things where we really need to figure out where council should go, what direction. I mean, I think it'd be great to have a lot of research on Airbnb in addition to the legal angles. Anyhow, that would just be a suggestion. We do have money in the budget for professional services, and maybe there's money in there to have an intern for a couple of months.
Thank you.
And then you wouldn't have to hear me talk as much because somebody else would be doing some of the work.
Once again, colleagues, thank you for you considering all the committees and authorities we figured on our committee report this year on who has what. We do have a couple items set aside for the new council person coming on. If there's something that maybe doesn't accommodate your schedule as much and maybe possibly needs switched around, please, we have time. We can still do that if need be. We just want to get something in place with some of the meetings. A lot of the authority meetings don't stop waiting for us to show up. So I appreciate your effort and help on that. I do want to ask Attorney Betts if there's, back to these neighborhood, whether there be bottle clubs or after-hour clubs, can we get some type of ordinance, a rough draft ordinance started in place to give us something to start with on getting an ordinance in place? Because we started 8 months ago, it was one place, and 8 months later, now we're dealing with two places. They're in residential neighborhoods. I have no problem with bottle clubs or after-hour clubs, but just not in residential neighborhoods, because the majority of 2019, they've been coming to council. They're already here in 2020. If we can, and I think I'd have full support of this council, just from what we've listened to and experienced, that it's time we get something in place. I don't know the legalities, where it all.
I can certainly prepare a draft, but what council needs to decide is what's in that. what's in that ordinance. I can prepare an ordinance. I can start it and I can finish it. What goes in the middle? I mean, what it sounds like we're talking about, it would be a zoning change, which would require a number of steps to change what's permitted in certain zoning districts. The behavior that's been identified at the meetings, and I've had some meetings with some individuals affected personally, but what's been identified is criminal behavior. That is already illegal. So I guess I just want to make sure that we understand going in, if we're not going to make a rule that says you can't shoot a gun at somebody. That's already a rule. We're not going to make a rule that says you can't park illegally. That's already a rule. We're not going to make a rule that says you can't loiter or, you know, be very loud late at night. That's already a rule. And so it becomes part of what you're hearing is what is going on is not lawful. So it's an enforcement issue, and I'm not attacking, the police have done a lot, but there's an enforcement issue. What you're talking about, saying prepare an ordinance, I'm not gonna make anything illegal. What it would be, as I understand it, would be to change zoning, which you could do, but there are other side effects of that and perhaps some unintended consequences. There are a number, I do not know the specifics, but I'm aware of a number of clubs that are in residential areas. And so we just need to be aware that if we're changing the rules, it's not just changing it for these two clubs, and I don't know anything about, but that may not be creating some problems. It will also affect clubs that do not create problems because it would be a change in the zoning rules.
Well, what about from this day forward, you cannot open up a club or an after-hour bottle, you know? Okay, yeah, naturally, I know there's some clubs that have been in place for 50 years probably, but what about from this date forward? Because,
it can be, but, and certainly we can do that. And so I will take a shot at trying to prepare something that may or may not meet with your wishes, but I'll prepare something that would be at least to get the discussion started. But going from this point forward, if that's the way it works, that would not affect anything that currently lawfully exists. So we're right back at the same point. And I'm not saying it's not a bad idea.
But there again, we went from one after-hours place that has caused trouble in the neighborhood.
Understood.
To a second one that could possibly be causing trouble, so we're getting people here complaining. And we're getting the phone calls. So what can we do from this day forward for potential other ones opening up in?
Now, there are already regulations for bars and bottle clubs. And these are not bars or bottle clubs. If they are, then they are not permitted. If they are just, you know, social halls, then the rules are different. So we need to be very careful in what we draft as an ordinance, but it would be as I understand it, unless somebody tells me different, what we would be doing is creating a zoning ordinance, changing zoning regulations of what's permitted in certain districts. If we do that, that would be prospective going forward, and it may be a benefit to the city. And if you deem that it is, then enact it. There's a lot of steps to go through. It doesn't cause a lot of delay, but there's a lot of steps. It has to go to certain planning committees, and it has to have a public hearing, but it would be doable.
Just a thought here, couldn't we have something like, 3 strikes and you're out? You know, police are there Saturday night at 2:30 in the morning, there's a problem. Strike 1. Second strike, you get 60 days closed. Let them start up again, if there's a problem again, or next time there's a problem, you shut them down again. I don't know if that's legal or not, it makes sense to me. That's bad in politics, I guess.
No, well, though it makes sense, and it may be legal, depending how it's done. We need to be very careful with that, because if you're taking away my property right, I may have claims against the city if you've closed me. While I like the idea, I want to just, and some of this, if it's legal strategy, isn't really for public, but what I can say is, you do have an issue when there is a shooting or there is a fight. It does not, I understand the circumstances, but does it automatically point to one specific facility? You need to be careful about just saying everything that happens in a certain neighborhood is a responsibility of one business. It may be, it may well be, but I'm just saying we have to be careful about saying there was a shooting on this night, therefore we're going to attribute it to this facility or that facility. We need to be very careful about that, but the concept is valid and may be able to be part of the ordinance.
Do we have data? I think we do. Don't they track shots fired and everything? I mean, could we have that data to look at to show in that particular area how many shots have been fired over a period of time, so we can compare before and after those establishments opened? I thought that we were tracking that somehow.
Though they involve police reports, and so there is, I don't know how it is formatted, but there are records of that, yes.
Okay, thanks.
And it probably still goes back to, is it at the establishment, or is it halfway down the block, or 2 doors down? Even though,
And I don't want to belabor the point, but I mean, if I invite, I guess the thought is that if I invite people to my home and I have a party at my house that complies with the law, and then those people leave my house and engage in criminal behavior, do I lose my house? Do I lose the ability to live in my home? I mean, and I'm just using that as an example. The initial thought is no. The people responsible for the bad behavior that happen to be invitees of at my house are responsible for their
Maybe
behavior.
drank at your house, that's the issue.
Right. Well, but if
Get
they're
drunk up and get goofy.
if they're drinking at these establishments,
Right.
then that may already be prohibited. And it would appear that it is prohibited. And so I will work on this. I get it. I've spent a lot of time and I've had a lot of meetings, but I will prepare a draft for council to at least start the discussion. I think that's helpful.
appreciate that. Ms. Stankiewicz.
I just have a revised memo that I presented to council with the new amounts based on the assumption changes that made at budget time. So these are the correct numbers now. These are the numbers that were in budget. So if anybody has any questions,
Do we have a copy of did we get the final budget? Okay, we don't have, I didn't miss picking up okay.
beginning of next week, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Schember.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I wanted to let you know we are working on the employee evaluations. We had a meeting this week with supervisors. We're starting with the non-union employees because we need to negotiate with the unions to introduce something like that. We're hopefully by the end of February, all managers managing non-union employees will understand the process. We had a training session with them that Connie Cook ran, and they'll be setting goals with their employees and then evaluating them in the late fall. I went to the 10th annual Martin Luther King dinner on January 11th, last Saturday, and it was incredible with Martin Luther King III there. I also went to a reception with him the night before, Friday night, and a lot of people there, and he was very motivating and very good to listen to. Also, last week I went to New York Lunch's 50th anniversary of Steve and Nina Pelioris owning that, and that was a really neat event. The place was packed, and it was very rewarding. I gave all of you a copy of the finalized Activating the Vision, which takes our 5-point vision and establishes 26 key performance indicators that we're going to use over the next 2 years here to measure how are we doing. Are we really creating the vision that I've put out to you? And the last item I just want to mention briefly is our press conference tomorrow. Every Thursday at 10 a.m. we have a press conference, and at tomorrow's press conference, the topics are, we'll be looking at some 2019 statistics in a number of different areas, including crime, the Citizens Response Center, large item pickup, and code enforcement. We are going to announce the kickoff. We're going to talk about the census. That's very important. I know you've all heard me talk about it before, but the census this year is vitally important. Every person we fail to count costs the city $2,100 per year in federal aid for the next 10 years. We know in the 2010 census there were thousands of people in Erie not counted. If we only have 1,000 this time, we lose $2.1 million per year in federal aid for the next 10 years, every year. So it's very important that we get the word out and get everybody to get counted. That especially applies to older people tend not to get counted. Immigrants and refugees, about 20% of Erie is new Americans, here that weren't born here but are here now. We have to make sure they get counted. College students, supposed to be wherever you live more than 6 months of the year is where you should be counted in the census. Most college students are here, more than 6 months of the year. They should be counted here. Also elderly, disabled, it's very important we get everybody counted for the sake of federal funding. So we'll also be talking about at the press conference tomorrow our vision. We're kind of going to highlight portions of this each time. We'll be talking about the Welcoming Vibrant Neighborhoods portion of it. We're going to showcase events that the Martin Luther King Center is running this month in celebration of Martin Luther King's anniversary. James Sherrod will be there talking about that. And I'll be providing an update of LERTA, and there's a very good increase again in the amount of the LERTA applications that have come in since the last time I reported. So if you're available, we'd love to see you there. I know you're all busy, so I wanted to at least give you an idea of what we're talking about. It will be broadcast on TV, and it's run over and over again on the city's channel as well. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
I have nothing other than tell me how you're gonna do, when, and how you're gonna pick the process.
Recess here or
Yeah, because then we would officially have to pick a date. I think, I'd say at this point, we'll close the meeting. I think we know what we're looking for as a council. Liz has some great ideas in there we can work on, but let's formalize it, but it doesn't have to be in resolution stature. We can agree as a council, this is how we're doing our.
And I'm fine with that. That just means February 5th, which is your next meeting.
We have to have
We're not gonna know, and so we're gonna need to pick a process before we.
No, by that meeting, we're gonna pick a candidate. Or a. Yes. We have one little void there with Mr. Brzezinski out of town for a few days. We're gonna work around that, but, before our February 5th meeting, I would think we will have a council person agreed upon.
Well, we have our Thursdays, always open study sessions.
Do we have time to, there again, the first,
Mr. President, I think what the attorney was saying, that if we suspend the meeting, we just have to announce it today, which we won't have to go through all the steps between now and.
well, we just would have to pick what day we would be back to
Finish the meeting.
finish that meeting, and really, that meeting is just putting amendments to the resolution by Councilperson Allen. That's the only reason we would suspend the meeting.
Correct.
But then we would still have to decide on a date, which,
To figure out the process, correct?
yes.
Let's figure out let's get together ASAP, figure out the process, and move process. We don't have anything. Right. Let's get the process set.
But you're saying we can't just say we suspend the meeting for, hey, we'll get together one of these days. We should decide right
You
now.
can, but you just can't get together without publicizing
Sunshine.
the time and date of the meeting.
And how soon do we have to do that?
I'll have to check. I know in 2018, when we replaced Mr. Mursky, we just did a legal ad stating that study session was changed from Thursday to a Tuesday, and that's when you did your voting.
But we had a process before then. That's what we're trying to say, is that we need to figure out the process at a meeting, was
On
my
what?
understanding.
Why do you have to have a meeting for the process? Can't you just?
Well, at some point,
I think it's only fair to the candidates that we let them know what the process is, so if we're gonna interview them, or if,
there doesn't have to be any process. I mean, you can make a motion. We pre-write everything, which is, believe me, it's a blessing of how you do it and how it's run. But I mean, you can make a motion to appoint somebody. I'm not suggesting you do this, but you can do it right now. I make a motion to fill the seat with this person. Second, all in favor? You get 4 votes, we're done.
I make a motion that we pull a name out of a hat.
Can't make a legal
That's
motion.
probably dangerous but legal, but,
It's probably.
Could we meet tomorrow and formulate a process then?
I think we probably, for one, if we're gonna adjourn, she has to advertise when we're finishing the meeting, Rose, is that what you're telling us? Or can we just, there's no advertising needed to say when we're going to,
Correct.
your choices are this: close the meeting, pick a new date at some point in time, place an ad in the paper, announce it to the public, and that meeting is open to the public. Just any old special meeting that you've ever had in the past. Or, if you want to meet tomorrow, let's just say, you could recess the meeting with, you'd specify, we would reconvene in this room or in the caucus room, whatever, at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. You're telling the public, it's announced, you did it at a public meeting, you would not need to run another legal ad. But either way, you have to identify a time, date, place, and it's open to the public.
okay, let's start with tomorrow. You got 9 AM free?
I do.
9 a.m.
It'd be better in the afternoon, but if we can get a consensus at 9
And
a.m.
we have,
Is this for this topic only?
correct, and then to close this meeting.
So when we recess this meeting and reconvene tomorrow, it will be for this certain topic? Okay.
But we gotta, we may not have enough people here either, though. What about in the afternoon? 2, 3 o'clock?
I have
Just
a
about any time.
book. Register. Before that.
I'm okay.
Mel?
Yes, sir.
In the afternoon work for you?
Yes, sir.
We'll go at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll recess this meeting till 2 o'clock, Thursday, the 16th, 2 p.m. And if council wants to come early, 1:30, to try to discuss
And the topic is,
the process we're gonna go through with selecting the replacement for Kaz Kwiatkowski as city council person.
the process for filling the vacant seat.
Mhm. So I'll leave my gavel alone for now.
It stays on.
Well, I think you can still
I won't.
gavel. Okay, wait, then I don't have to do the roll call or anything when we recess?
No, you're You're recessing.
Okay, so I'm just gonna announce that council recesses at 9:51 PM, and will reconvene tomorrow, Thursday, January 16th at 2 PM for the process of filling the vacant council seat.
No, we aren't gonna fill it tomorrow, are we?
No, it's the process.
But you said the process of filling, we're to
I
make
said
the
the process.
process.
I said the process.
Oh my God.
For filling the seat.
Okay.
Not to fill the seat.